Welcome to Season 5 of Your Bird Story, a podcast about everyday people and their relationships and interactions with wild birds. I'm your host, Georgia Silvera Seamans. I am pleased to be speaking with Melissa Hafting in a special micro series within Your Bird Story called Birding Day Routine. So, Melissa, welcome, and please introduce yourself to listeners.
Hi, my name is Melissa Hafting. I'm honored to be here. I'm a biologist and I live in British Columbia. I founded the Young Birders program, which is a young birders club for kids age 12 to 18. I take them out on field trips across the province, and it's been really inspiring and a big part of joy in my life. I'm also passionate about making birding more inclusive for people like myself.
And when you say people like yourself, since this is audio, can you say more?
Right. Yeah, I'm a Black woman and I'm passionate about BIPOC people, making them feel more inclusive, and LGBTQ plus community as well.
And why is that important to you?
Because when I started getting into birding, I didn't feel very included. Not everyone was friendly to me. It was not very welcoming. And there was nobody that looked like me out there birding. So I want to make sure that the youth coming up feel included and welcome, and nature belongs to everyone. So there's no reason why there should be so much gatekeeping and not making people feel included.
How has it changed between when you first started and now?
Well, there's still lots of work that needs to be done, but I definitely am seeing more diverse people out there birding. People are being more educated and aware about the problems that BIPOC people face in the community, the exclusion and stuff like that. I'm definitely seeing some changes, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And I say that because still most boards and committees are mostly white birders and still mostly male birders. There's definitely more female birders getting into it now, which is a huge change from when I started, but there's still lots of barriers to BIPOC people in this hobby.
How do you have these conversations with the young people that you work with?
They're pretty open about it themselves. And I'm open with them about it. I speak to them like adults, and we talk about how they don't feel welcome. And a lot of the young birders who have come on my walks have told me that they feel welcome now. And this is the first time they feel safe. So it is really important for people to understand why these types of barriers exist for people of color, why birders don't feel safe out there, why there's an extra level of suspicion for birders of color, and particularly Black birders.
Have you found that the young people who bird with you, are they inspired to become birding guides and leaders themselves?
Yes, I've definitely seen that the young birders have been inspired to become guides and also bird biologists, wildlife educators, and stuff like that. I've been so inspired to see where they've ended up and what all they've done. And they've been so passionate about conservation, protecting this planet. And I think that's really vital. And one of the reasons why I do this type of mentorship work with the young people is that you need to get these youth passionate about the environment in order for them to want to protect it. And it's not very hard to do with these youth that are so interested. They're already so passionate and asking about ways how they can protect the environment to save more bird habitat. And it's really inspiring. And many of the youth in my program who have graduated, because I started in 2014, have gone on and they're working as biologists or bird guides. And they still talk to me and keep me updated on their lives. One was just telling me that they were guiding in Ecuador yesterday, and another is a bird biologist down in San Diego. It's really beautiful for me to see all that, to see them doing so well and still sticking with it.
Well, I think it speaks to the excellence of your mentorship, that you have sustained these relationships, that they feel comfortable coming back to you and sharing their accomplishments.
Thank you so much.
You write about some of these issues and many more in your book titled Dare to Bird. I wanted to ask what inspired the title?
Well, Dare to Bird is the name also of my personal blog. And to me, it was, I want to make people feel like birding is an adventure. Get out there and just bird wherever you are. You doesn't have to go far or be a fancy traveler. You can bird even in your own backyard, but just get out there and dare to have an adventure. That's where I came up with the title.
How long did it take you to draft the book? Like, what was your process in putting together this book?
Yeah, I started this book after my mother passed away Christmas Eve in 2021. And then I was still working on it when my father passed away. He passed away on her birthday in February 2023. So it was over 2 years. And I needed some extra time, of course, after my dad died to add some chapter about him. And the publishers were very good about giving me extra time, but it took just over 2 years to write the book. It was very hard when you're grieving. I have to admit, it was very hard.
Would you mind saying how birding and the act of writing may have helped in processing your grief?
Birding has definitely helped me with processing my grief because it gives me an outlet to get out there and have some distraction, some peace, alone time. It's really important to focus the mind on something else other than all the grief that you're feeling. And also you can get out there and grieve too while you bird. I cried a lot while birding. And the writing process did help me in grieving because it helped me to remember all the good times I spent with my mother and father, especially with birding, especially in the later years as my mom was terminal with breast cancer. You know, one of the final trips I did with her was taking her up to the Caribou region of BC and looking at birds there. She couldn't walk very much, but we did a lot of car birding. That's the good thing about birding is that you can do so many different ways of doing birding. And so I'll always remember that and how the bluebirds made her smile. That was her favorite bird. A yellow-headed blackbird, she got to see those before she died. And all that was very cathartic, remembering all those memories with her. And then with my father, he was the one that really got me into birding as a young kid. The age of 5, bought me my first bird book, taught me how to feed birds and stuff like that. So I was remembering watching snow geese with him and all the memories as well with him and how he really sparked this passion in me. So I was really grateful when I was writing the book about all the love and amazing experience I got to have with my parents and share that with others as well.
Mm, that sounds really lovely, and I appreciate you sharing that in this space. Do you know why the bluebird was your mom's favorite bird?
I think that it's just the beautiful color of the birds, their very gentle behavior. But we would always do these drives up to an area called Merritt, BC, which is a few hours away from Vancouver. And we would go and look at the bluebirds. So I think it was also a bonding time and just, yeah, they're such a pretty bird to watch anyway. So I think that blue color really it held her. We also would watch swallows together. I have a swallow nest box project in the city where I live. That would be something that we could go and do together. She could watch the swallows flying all over the water, especially when she couldn't walk very well and was sick. She died at home, and there was a bird feeder in their yard where they had tons of American goldfinches and hummingbirds. And, you know, when she was laying on her bed where she died at home, there was a window where she could look at the birds. And even when she lost the ability to speak, looking at those American goldfinches really brought a smile to her face and the Anna's hummingbirds. So I'll always be grateful for the gift of birds that they gave to my mother too in her final days. I really think birding has helped a lot with my grief and also with the grief of people who were dying in my life. They're also grieving. She knew that she was going to die, and she found comfort in looking at the birds.
Hmm. I've heard that from another guest on the podcast about the ways in which looking out for birds and watching their behavior and the way that they live provided a lot of sort of comfort and strength during really difficult times. You mentioned a swallow project. Can you say more about that? What inspired you to start that?
Well, I started that project in 2021. It's a tree swallow nest box project, and I also have a purple martin nest box project. I just saw a lot of areas, like 3 parks in Richmond that had no nest boxes, and I could see lots of swallows flying around. And they already have a loss of habitat for nesting with not many natural cavities left. So I petitioned the city and asked if we could put in nest boxes, and went to city council, and they were very receptive about it. And then they helped me build the nest boxes in 3 different parks. And then after that was a success, I asked them if I could have a purple martin nest box project in another park called Gary Point Park. And that's been a real success with them almost coming immediately. I put them up in March and of last year, and they were there for the first nest box season. I thought sometimes it would take 1 to 2 years to establish a colony, but just showed that there was such a need for these nest box. The tree swallows did have in the beginning a few problems with die-offs because of the heat waves, which is a part of climate change now. So I had to build heat shields for all the nest boxes. It's a sad thing that we have to do that, but it seems like that's the way going forward now for tree swallows to help to protect them against the warming climate. And now that I put on the heat shields and vent holes and everything like that and painted the nest boxes all white, they seem to be doing a lot better. Our season this year was a success as well. So, yeah.
Oh, gosh, that's so inspiring. It's so great to hear that a municipality made it so easy for a resident to implement these conservation strategies on public land.
I was very grateful to them for that.
Yeah. So you monitor the sites. What happens to the information that you collect?
Yeah, so we input it into eBird and also a Birds Canada tracking project called Nature Counts here, Project Nestwatch. So the data is collected for citizen science, which is good. And the City of Richmond also gets a copy of that data as well. And we can track over the years. And I do a report every year for the city showing how the birds have done each year and if there's any problems or die-offs, everything's tracked because I do nest box checks through the season and then I clean out the nest boxes. So yeah, it's really good and hopefully showing, trends in the population and why there's a need for nest boxes like this with, like I said, the loss of natural nesting cavities in trees with logging and urban development. Hopefully more cities adopt these types of things.
Well, certainly I will, now that I know this, it'll be something that I can point to whenever I'm in these kinds of conversations. You birded with both your parents and you're a mentor to young people who are entering the field, both as scientists and as guides. And I'm curious what it's like when you go birding by yourself. What is your process? So, do you go birding every day? If not every day, how do you decide which day to head out there to look for birds?
I try to go out every day, but of course, sometimes that's not possible. But I run the Rare Bird Alert as well, which is a website that tells the people in BC where the rare birds are in the province. So other birders report them to me, and then I post them on this website. So sometimes I go out and look where there's a rare bird reported that I want to see, and I'll go and do birding that way. But more often than not, I'll just go out to my local patch to look at birds there, what birds will be showing up there. Especially in the springtime, I love to do that because you never know what's going to show up in your local patch every day in migration. And that's the most exciting time for me. But I just went out on the weekend on my own and went birding down at, it's called White Rock Pier. And I was looking through all the different sea ducks and grebes and saw a Clark's grebe there, which is a rare bird for us here. And it's just nice to just get out there and look at whatever you can find when you see it. Sometimes I'll do dedicated trips like, I'll be like, I want to go see if I can find a snow bunting today. So I'll go to a jetty where it's appropriate habitat for these types of birds. But more often than not, I just go out and see what I see wherever I end up.
Do you have any rituals associated with birding?
I wouldn't say I have too many rituals. I mean, I always go out with my camera, my binoculars, and my scope. And sometimes I don't take my camera, so that's not true. But always my binoculars and my scope. So I guess that's a ritual. I just find it as a source of peace and relaxation for me. So as soon as I get out there and start birding or walking, even if it's not chasing a rarity, just getting out there in nature is just really healing for me.
The binoculars and the scope, how do you use them? What makes them distinct tools for you?
Yeah, so the binoculars are my number one thing because it helps me to see the birds up close, and it's more versatile than a scope because a scope is to see things if in long distances away, like shorebirds that are far out on the mudflats or raptors way far on a different post or things like that. So I use them in different ways, and a scope is more heavy to carry around if you're doing long distance walking or hiking. It's more for, yeah, when I'm doing shorebirding at a place called Boundary Bay here or when I'm looking at raptors. But I do like to have the scope because it is a great way to zoom in on one bird you're trying to look at and see it so clearly and much closer up to the eye. Yeah, having my binoculars is essential for me because I just feel almost naked without them and I can't see the birds as clearly without it. And I can really make sure that my identification is correct. Like if I think with my naked eyes, if I think I see a towhee, when I put on the binoculars, I can make sure that that's what I really saw. So there's no second guessing yourself.
Yeah. How many pairs of binoculars have you gone through, do you think, as a birder?
Oh my goodness, so many. And I use my binoculars like so often that the paint's coming off of them and I've broken them in two. And I use Vortex binoculars because they have a really good policy customer warranty. Like even if you break them in two, you send them to them and they'll send you a new pair. So they're really good, or they'll repair broken ones. Yeah, I've gone through like over 10 pairs of binoculars, and I think that's a low estimate.
I've had a similar experience with Vortex. They're very customer oriented, which is nice. A friend that I sometimes bird with, I know that when we're going out to watch birds, we're going to be there for a while. How do you decide how much time to spend in your patch or in any given location?
I think I'll just bird until I'm really, really tired and ready to leave, or I felt that I've looked at all the areas. That's really important, that I feel like I've looked at all the areas if time allows. You know, if I'm not in a rush, I try to really bird the area intensely to make sure I haven't missed any birds.
And what's the most rare bird you've seen or heard about in your role?
I've heard of lots of rare birds. Running the rare bird alert, it's amazing to see what comes through the province. But for myself, probably maybe the Siberian Accentor that was in Surrey. I think
Hmm.
that may be one of the rarest birds I've seen.
Could you describe? I am not familiar with this species.
It's a small bird. It's kind of orange and brown. It's a bird that's found in Asia. It's not the most fanciest bird, but it's very rare. And it was pretty neat to see. I've also seen a redback shrike, which is from Europe as well. And that it's ABA code 5 bird. So it's really, really rare. I saw that in Powell River. And that's like similar to our northern shrikes or loggerhead shrikes, except it looks much different. It's more brown and browny reddish color, but it behaves just very much the same way. So, anyways, I saw those two birds, which are very rare, and countless other ones. Yeah, it's hard to really know which one is the rarest I've seen, but those are two of the rarest.
And do you have a favorite amongst all the birds that you've been exposed to?
Yeah, my favorite bird is a rough-legged hawk. I just love them. I love how they hover over the prey. I love how they come in dark and light morphs and intermediate morphs. So they're just really, really beautiful. And I love the dark chocolate morph, which is very rare here to see. Really noticed a decline in those birds since I was a young child, where you could go out and see like 20 or 30 of them. And now we're lucky if we get one. They breed up in the high Arctic, and it just shows how they're suffering on their breeding grounds and loss of habitat and how climate change is affecting their prey and nesting. And it's really sad to see that. So now they've become quite rare when they used to be quite common here.
Yeah, that's one of those sort of bells or clarion calls when your common birds start to decline in population. That's a real signal of something gone wrong. And it seems that everyone is experiencing this decline in their local species, both animal and plant. So the final chapter in your book is titled Hope. And I wonder if you could talk about what you hope to see in the birding world going forward, both in terms of people and the species themselves.
Yeah, I hope to see more people getting passionate about protecting their habitats and the birds that live within those habitats. And I hope to see more birders out there as well, more birders of color, more birders feeling welcome, and more young people in birding, more people in the LGBTQ plus community, more women. I just want to see more people of everyone out there feeling welcome, feeling included, and feeling passionate about wanting to protect the birds and their habitats and getting some sort of joy and peace and happiness from looking at birds. I think that's my greatest hope. And I want more and more people to discover this hobby because it can bring so much benefits to their life. I can't say anything negative about birding when there's so much great joys it can bring to their life. As long as people are made to feel included, I can't see anything negative about this hobby.
And if you had the opportunity to represent birds at the UN, let's say, what's the message that you would have, both locally and globally, if you were at that type of platform?
I would try to tell people that birds bring us so many gifts that the least we can do for them is make sure that they're protected in their habitats. It's our final gift back to them to say thank you for all you've done for us.
I love that. Very relational. Well, thanks so much, Melissa, for joining the podcast.
I really enjoyed this conversation. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much. You're wonderful to talk to, and I really enjoyed it.
It was my pleasure to talk with you as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Bird Story. Tune in on the second Thursday of next month for the next episode. In the meantime, explore our archives, like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Your Bird Story is edited and produced by Pod to the People. Your Bird Story is an initiative of Local Nature Lab.